I had to squeeze one more out of here. I just had to. And you will see why I chose this record over here soon enough. But before we talk about this album, we have to talk about the artist behind this record, Lianne La Havas. Breaking out into the musical mainstream in 2012 with her album Is Your Love Big Enough? She had signed on to the Warner Brother record label in 2010 for a 2-year contract, which led to that album. And while critics did appreciate that record, it didn't seem to get the mainstream hype that she wanted or that Warner Brothers wanted. And while this record managed to push her into the limelight for some artists such as Bon Iver, Alicia Keys, and Alt J, who actually featured her on their 2014 album This Is All Yours, she wasn't getting the fan push that some critics wanted, or maybe that Warner Brothers wanted. She was definitely known, but I felt like people back then were looking at her as just some kind of ordinary or maybe a regular kind of singer-songwriter that's using elements of soul into her music as well. And then her 2015 album Blood came out, and that kind of changed the perception of some people. It really started to get the hype for Lianne La Havas up and rolling like a snowball. That album, as good as it is, got her a lot of attention, got her a lot of praise, and got her more fans. And then there was pretty much a 5-year gap of silence between that record and this record. Early 2020, Lianne La Havas put out a single titled Bittersweet. This is one of 4 singles she would put out in preparation for this new self-titled album. The other singles being a cover of a Radiohead song, Weird Fishes, Can't Fight, and Paper Thin. What's really unique about this record is that this time I feel like Lianne La Havas came together with a concept, with a sound, and an idea going into the album, and she executed the idea flawlessly. A concept album that's pretty much relishing in the idea of a relationship and the stages of a relationship. And when I mean the stages of a relationship, I mean all of the relationship, from the beginning to the end, where it starts off in lust, in romance, and then it ends in heartbreak. And when you start to think about this in mind, you will then listen to the album and realize, wow, this actually is kind of like the entire cycle. And while this idea of a relationship from start to finish in this early romance to a demise situation isn't uncommon, the way Lianne La Havas puts this album together and the way she orchestrates this entire project, it's done so well that I just can't help but to love it. The opening track, the full-length version of the song, the single Bittersweet, is what we pretty much get. The first stages of love, the first stages of looking at someone and falling in love with the person, getting to know that person as well. The song starts off this record with a very lovely neo-soul number. I like how the introduction of this track starts off kind of bouncy. And despite this song, and actually a lot of the songs on this record being very simplistic, not a lot's going into the instrumentals on these tracks, it's what Lianne La Havas can do with the simplicity that is all the more impressive. Lianne La Havas is pretty much singing in vibrato on most of these songs. There are moments where she does get into her higher register, and oh man, it is succulent, but we will get to that point. Again, this song details the first stages of love, of falling in love with someone, finding that special person that you think you could be with forever. Going into the next track, Read My Mind, which then you start to kind of piece together as the album progresses. This is very much a conceptual album. This being in the stages of just kind of getting to know each other, kind of getting to work with each other, starting to really relish with one's company. This song has a nice swing to it that's a little jazzy in a lot of respects, but it just has this free-form flow to it that is absolutely addictive. Again, Lianne La Havas' vocals on this song, fantastic, lovely, gorgeous. Not only can Lianne La Havas put together a song that sounds like the beginning of a relationship, she can put into words the feelings of a beginning of a relationship. The track Green Papayas continues with this theme, and this time it's getting a little more intimate. The instrumental is subtle, it's simple, it's very bare bones. This track probably has my favorite instrumental on this entire record. Just the subtle guitar playing throughout the entirety of the song is not at all annoying or boring. It doesn't really get to that point whatsoever. The song Can't Fight, again, continuing the theme of the album, is more of a jaunty little soul number. The drums on this record, and especially on this song, are very present. And the hook on the song, just the way Lianne, just her vocals can swing on this instrumental is absolutely gorgeous. When we get to the track Paper Thin, we start to notice a shift in the sound of this record. It comes from a more jaunty, jovial, and happy place to a more sudden realization or more of a daunting feeling. Paper Thin feels like a very vulnerable moment on the record, the moment where you feel like you're starting to fall out of love with a particular person, trying to do things to rekindle those experiences and that love that you think is inside you. You're trying to light up the spark once again, and you can definitely tell by the vocals on this track, Lianne is just trying her best to continue this relationship. Or on the opposite side, maybe Lianne La Havas knows that the other person is falling out of love with them while she is still in love, and so she's trying her best to maintain the relationship and again try to do things as best as possible to keep the relationship alive. The interlude is a very important moment on this record because then it starts to shift to the point where we start to fall out of love and towards the demise of the relationship. And while the interlude on this album isn't really that memorable, it's definitely not something that I say is forgettable. Even at a minute long, it just feels like a great transition from the first half of the album to the next. We then get to the Radiohead cover of the track Weird Fishes. You get the signature drum beat that starts the song off. Instead of being more electronic, it's definitely more percussive. It feels more natural, to say the least. The song starts off very faint. Vocally, Lianne is, again, faint and quaint and kind of hushed. But the song kind of builds and builds and builds on top of this until it gets to a very silent bridge until we get to the crescendo of the track, which is absolutely fantastic. There are strings that are incorporated towards the back end of the track. Just vocally, how Lianne La Havas soars across this instrumental. Just the way the instruments all come together in such a great way. The guitars, the drums, just her vocals, like, oh god, it's godly. I remember listening to the song for the first time and I felt like I was just kind of like lifted out of my chair. It was just that heavenly. It's just that gorgeous. It's just that beautiful. Please Don't Make Me Cry is pretty much the point on the album which the relationship is kind of derailing. Lianne La Havas doesn't want this person to leave. She doesn't want to let this person go. She wants to continue the relationship, or she wishes that she could continue the relationship, but she just doesn't feel that spark anymore. It has now almost completely diminished. Track 7 Times is probably one of the more heart-wrenching songs on this record because it's pretty much Lianne saying that she just wants this person back. You know, all night, all day. She cries and prays all night, all day. And then we get to the track Courage and Sour Flower. These final 2 moments on this album really detail Lianne La Havas trying her best to get over the situation. I know on the track Sour Flower, there is a moment where she says she's crying because she is free, not because she is upset. The ending of this record is pretty much the acceptance of the demise of the relationship, the finality of the relationship. And while Lianne La Havas, while maybe not being completely over what happened, she can be at peace with what she experienced. The musical backdrops of a lot of these songs, again, very simple, have a neo-soul tinge to them. Track after track after track, I am stunningly surprised by how simple all of these songs seem to be, and how well Lianne La Havas can do with such simple instrumentation, such simple organization, such simple everything on this record. The only thing that's not really simple in my mind is the lyricism, which is very detailed, but also kind of most of the time on the nose as well. Sometimes she is being very metaphorical, sometimes she's being very literal, but all the time on this record, there is a profound beauty to what's being done. There is a passionate feeling amongst every single track on this album. I love how soft and soothing and soulful this record is. I love the instrumentation on a good bulk of these tracks. Again, simplicity at its finest. Simplicity working to the creator's benefit. This record is really greater than the sum of its parts. I feel like taking something out would take out a very key part. Taking out a song off of this record would take out a key part on this album. Really, the only complaint I have with this record is that there's two versions of Bittersweet on here. Because the single version of this song is on the track listing, I just feel like it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because it doesn't feel like it fits into the mold of the record. Other than that though, I am thoroughly very impressed with this project, and I am very hyped to see where Lianne La Havas can go from here. This record made me a Lianne La Havas fan, and I will say that confidently. From the production to the instrumentals to the lyricism, everything about this record, I said it before, I'll say it again, gorgeous, lovely, sentimental, and absolutely profound. Personally, this record is a very strong A. I could not have not reviewed it or put it in a condensed version of a review. It's just too good to knock off. However, I am curious to know, what are your thoughts and opinions on this album down below? Let me know what albums you want me to review next, and that is it. Leave a like, comment, share, do whatever you want. Let me know how I can improve future videos down below. Remember, this is only my opinion, and you know the rest.